I flew 18 hours across the ocean to celebrate my younger sister's wedding day, carrying a dress I had bought months prior and a gift I had carefully wrapped on my hotel bed the night before. But when I reached the barn entrance, my own mother stepped directly into my path and blocked the double doors. She looked at me without a single trace of guilt or hesitation, and said that only family was allowed inside, and that I had not been invited. Before we dive into how I dealt with this painful betrayal, please take a second to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you enjoy true family drama stories. Also, drop your current location and local time in the comments below, because I love seeing where everyone is listening from around the world. Make sure to stick around for the next 4 minutes, because the way the vendor contracts unfolded completely flipped the script on my entire family. To understand how my own mother could look me in the eye and pretend I was a total stranger, we have to go back to last autumn, when my younger sister Julianne first announced her engagement. I was sitting in my London apartment on a dreary Tuesday evening when my phone lit up with a video call from Julianne, who was 26 and still living near our parents in Tennessee. When I answered, her face filled the screen as she flashed a sparkling diamond ring, squealing that her boyfriend Marcus had proposed at a private vineyard over the weekend. Marcus came from the Caldwell family, a prominent local dynasty that owned the largest automotive dealership network across 3 counties, meaning he was polite, wealthy, and widely celebrated throughout our hometown. My mother, Evelyn, stepped into the camera frame with a polished smile that never quite reached her eyes, subtly dropping hints that I should not waste money on an expensive plane ticket for such a small gathering. Even back then, I should have recognized the subtle signs that my mother was actively trying to erase my presence from the upcoming celebration. 2 weeks after the announcement, Evelyn called my desktop directly on a Wednesday morning to discuss what she called a brief financial formality regarding the event preparations. She explained that because her own credit rating was compromised after refinancing their house, and because Julianne had no established credit history, the event organizers needed a primary guarantor to sign the contracts. She asked me to put my name on 4 major vendor agreements covering the venue, catering, floor arrangements, and photography, assuring me that the family would handle the final invoices long before the event date arrived. Having previously co-signed loans for my father that took years to clear from my personal record, I hesitated, but my protective instincts as an older sister ultimate won out over my better judgment. I signed the paperwork, placing $41,000 of legal financial liability directly onto my credit file without reading the fine print twice. Over the next 3 months, the wedding planning moved forward rapidly, yet I was systematically excluded from every group chat, dress fitting, and preliminary gathering. Whenever I called Julianne to ask about dress codes or to offer help with preparations, she brushed off my questions with brief text messages, claiming she was far too busy to talk. I never received an official printed invitation in the mail, but I convinced myself that formal stationery was unnecessary for immediate family members who were automatically included. The true reality hit me too, weeks before the big day, when Julianne posted a photograph online from her rehearsal dinner featuring our mother beaming, alongside 5 bridesmaids. The caption read that her entire world and complete family were gathered in that single room, yet I was sitting 3,000 miles away, completely omitted from the picture. Despite the growing knot in my stomach, I spent nearly $3,000 on round-trip flights, a hotel reservation, and a high-end chef knife set that my sister had specifically requested. When I finally arrived at Meadow Creek Barn on Saturday afternoon, the picturesque pasture was filled with glowing lanterns, white fencing, and luxury vehicles belonging to the groom's wealthy relatives. Walking up the gravel pathway toward the main entrance, I spotted my father standing near the doorway in a tailored suit. But the moment his eyes met mine, his smile vanished and he quickly retreated indoors. Before I could reach the threshold, my mother stepped outside, smoothed her champagne silk gown, and firmly stood between me and the doors with her arms crossed tightly. When I told her I had just completed an 18-hour journey to see my sister get married, she coldly whispered that only family members were permitted inside, and demanded that I turn around immediately. Standing there in my navy dress with the heavy gift in my hands, I reminded her that my signature was on every single vendor contract that made the event possible. She brushed my words aside without a flinch, insisting that my presence was entirely inappropriate and that I needed to leave before making a public scene. Before I could process the shock of her words, the double doors swung open and the groom's mother, Victoria Caldwell, stepped onto the porch in an elegant pastel dress. Victoria was a prominent community figure who headed local charity boards and carried herself with the sharp authority of someone who tolerated zero social embarrassment. Upon seeing us, Victoria warmly asked if everything was all right, staring at me with obvious curiosity before asking Evelyn if the newcomer was a friend of the family. My mother did not hesitate for a single second. She adjusted her posture, flashed a bright artificial smile, and casually claimed I was merely a distant relative from out of town who had confused the schedule. Hearing my own mother label me as a distant cousin while looking right at me felt like a physical blow, leaving me completely speechless as Victoria nodded politely and headed back inside. Turning back to my mother, I asked her point-blank how long she had been telling people that she only had one daughter, but her eyes held nothing but raw, cornered panic. At that moment, the painful truth became agonizingly clear. My family had not simply forgotten to invite me. They had deliberately erased my existence from their new social circle. Every instinct inside me screamed to push past her, walk into that decorated barn, and announce to all 100 guests that the woman host was a complete liar who relied on my credit card. I looked at the golden lights framing the windows, listened to the string quartet playing softly inside, and caught a glimpse of my father hiding in the shadows of the doorway. Instead of creating a scene that would forever define me by their malice, I carefully set the wrapped present onto the wooden steps and told my mother to keep the gift for Julienne. She let out a small sigh of relief, assuming I was yielding to her demands, but I raised my hand to cut off her fake gratitude before turning around completely. I walked back down the gravel driveway toward my rental car, listening to the wedding music begin in the distance as I sat quietly behind the wheel. Back in my room at the Magnolia Inn, I sat on the edge of the bed with mascara smudged on my face, staring at the vendor confirmation emails sitting in my inbox. Each contract for the venue, the catering company, the floral designer, and the photographer listed my name as the sole guarantor, with $38,000 remaining due within 5 business days post-event. Later that evening, my phone rang with an incoming call from my Aunt Beatrice, my mother's outspoken older sister who had attended the reception. Beatrice was furious, explaining that during the dinner toasts, my mother had publicly toasted her sweet little family of 3, completely ignoring my existence while surrounded by town gossip. When I revealed to Beatrice that I had been turned away at the door despite funding the entire event under my legal name, she went quiet with rage before advising me to protect my own future. Beatrice made it abundantly clear that since my mother had declared to a room full of people that I was not family, I owed that room absolutely nothing. By Sunday morning, Julienne had posted a full gallery of wedding photos online, with captions celebrating everyone who mattered, completely oblivious to the financial storm brewing overhead. The automated vendor invoices began hitting my email inbox with strict payment deadlines, demanding thousands of dollars for a celebration I was forcibly excluded from attending. A strange sense of calm settled over me as I realized that I held total legal authority over every authorization linked to my bank accounts. Rather than reacting with wild anger or sending spiteful text messages, I picked up my desktop phone and systematically called all 4 primary wedding vendors. I politely informed each manager that as the named contract holder, I was formally withdrawing my payment authorization and requesting that all final balances be redirected directly. to the event hosts in Tennessee. The managers were professional and compliant, updating their records immediately while I contacted my financial institution to cancel the primary card associated with the pending transactions. On Monday morning, I checked out of the hotel early, drove straight to the airport, and booked a direct flight back home to London to distance myself from the impending fallout. Sure enough, by Tuesday afternoon, my phone began ringing incessantly with frantic calls from my mother, as the vendors began redirecting the unpaid balances to her personal address. When I finally answered, Evelyn dropped her usual condescending tone and frantically demanded to know why the venue manager was claiming that the $30,000 balance was now her personal responsibility. I calmly explained that since she had explicitly informed her new in-laws that I was not part of the family, she and my father were fully responsible for covering their own social hosting fees. She attempted to manipulate me by claiming my father's health was deteriorating from the stress, but I remained firm, stating that his choices at the door were his own to live with. She screamed that I was ruining my sister's new life before slamming the receiver down, realizing that her usual emotional guilt trips no longer had any power over me. Over the next 48 hours, my mother mobilized the entire extended family network, instructing everyone to pressure me into covering the massive balance before legal action was taken. Julianne left crying voicemails complaining that her new husband was furious about the hidden financial strain and demanding to know why I was ruining her honeymoon over a minor misunderstanding. I responded with a single text message reminding her that she had willingly participated in erasing me from her life, and therefore she could manage the consequences alongside her husband. My father even sent a brief email attempting to play the mediator, but when I asked him why he stood silently in the doorway while my mother humiliated me, he had no answers to offer. Seeing them all scramble to avoid accountability proved that none of them valued me as a human being. They simply valued the financial convenience I provided to maintain their artificial image. The turning point occurred when Aunt Beatrice took matters into her own hands and placed a direct phone call to Victoria Caldwell to set the record straight. Beatrice informed the groom's mother that Evelyn had 2 daughters, that the eldest had paid for the entire wedding up front, and that my mother had thrown me out at the door to maintain a lie. Victoria was horrified by the deceit, realizing that her family had been manipulated by my mother's desperate attempt to appear higher in social standing than she actually was. The news spread like wildfire throughout our small hometown, turning the local social chatter completely against my mother as neighbors realized how cruelly she had treated her eldest child. Victoria made it clear that the Caldwell family would not cover a single dime of the unpaid bills, forcing Julianne and Marcus to take out a high-interest personal loan to pay off the venue managers. The fairy tale marriage began with heavy debt and fractured trust, while my mother was left ostracized from the local community groups she had tried so hard to impress. 6 months have passed since that weekend, and my life in London has transformed into something far healthier and remarkably peaceful. I received a major promotion at my software firm, moved into a bright new apartment overlooking the city, and established firm boundaries that prevent toxic family dynamics from draining my life energy. My father eventually sent me a long, written confession admitting his cowardice on the day of the wedding, and while I acknowledged his message, I have kept the door to my personal life firmly locked. My mother has never apologized, choosing instead to portray herself as a victim to anyone who will still listen. But her opinions no longer carry any weight in my world. Walking along the river on quiet evenings, I feel an incredible sense of relief knowing that I finally stopped paying for a seat at a table where I was never truly welcomed. Dropping those financial obligations cost me thousands in travel expenses, but gaining my self-respect and freedom proved to be worth every single cent.